It's a Camo Dave show on Camo YouTube video. Top news, nomads, and weather. Where all the cool cats get together. It's a Camo Dave show. Where's the music by the Doxinator?
Hey, it's February 28, 2021. Let's do some letters here for the Camo Dave channel. This morning's video, I talked about off-grid living, and there's definitely a confusion about what that is. Technically, the grid, the power grid, is, where you get all your electricity, the power lines, plugging in, getting, and yes, so technically, some people say that you can off-grid live as long as you don't connect to the power lines. Now, does that mean you can off-grid live in a house or in an apartment in the middle of the city, as long as you're just not getting any power? Call the power company up, tell them to turn off your power. Is that technically off-grid living? Technically, you're living off the grid. You're not connected to the power grid. However, I argue that the grid is more than just the power lines. The grid is all the other grids: the water grid, the sewer grid, the communications grid. For me, off-grid living is literally living away from all the grids: the power, the water, the sewer, even the communications grid, cell phones. Can you live off-grid having cell phone connections and Wi-Fi? Some people say yes, some people say no. What about a satellite? Can you live off-grid with satellite connections? Me, it's kind of like you go live in a shack in the middle of the woods with nothing. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no phone connection, there's nothing. Okay, that is truly off-grid living. Scott Steele says off-grid just means you are disconnected from the energy grid, so you don't get your gas, electric, water, or from a public utility company. However, your definition of off-grid seems to be completely disconnected from society. The grid simply is referring to the energy grid. It has nothing to do with how close you are to civilization. Yeah, again, that's where I think we differ. My definition of off-grid is being literally away from the whole grid of civilization, not just the power. Whereas just turning off the power, the water, the lights, the gas. Yeah, I think true off-grid living is out in the middle of nowhere, not connected to anything. Carol West says, my ex-husband and I lived off-grid on a remote property in Oregon. No electricity, pre-cell phones. Had a generator to run the well water to the shack and a wood water heater for dishes and bathing. We had a big garden and people left us notes at our gate on the road if they had odd jobs for us. Now that's off-grid. I agree. KC80V IMO, off-grid is not being connected to commercial electric system, city, county water, city, county sewer. Not being connected to reality is not off-grid living. What? You can be off the reality grid, right? That's off-grid. I'm not Chuck. Now, this man knows what he's talking about. I'm not Chuck. Charles says, in order to define off-grid, you have to first define the grid. Strictly speaking, the grid is the AC power grid. So if you don't have a commercial power service, you are off-grid. Defining it as being without cell service isn't correct. Well, so does that mean I could be living off-grid in this apartment right in the middle of this city as long as I pull the circuit breakers and cut off my power? That would make me living off-grid, right? I'm still dependent on my neighbors, other people, the other services in the city, the cell, I don't know. To me, off-grid is more than just disconnecting from the power. Totally off topic here. Rick Petticourt says I should do creepy, long, pointy sideburns. We were talking about, what's her name? Samantha Olmstead, the airlines, she's not an airline steward, she's a flight attendant, right? Gene Jones says she's a flight attendant who is living in her van temporarily in between gigs. Well, she's on furlough, her job's coming back very soon. Gene Jones says airline stewardesses get poor pay. My daughter, when starting out, did not have her own route. She was expected to sit at DFW all day and wait for a flight, not paid. Wow, she was paid only when the door on the plane closed, and she stopped when the door on the plane opened. They're not paid for time spent boarding passengers or getting them off the plane. Really? I don't know. I thought a flight attendant just simply made a salary, But, so when the doors open on the plane and they're bringing passengers in, they're not getting paid, at least according to Gene Jones. Good job if you live at your parents or have a significant other and you only want flying privileges, and most share apartments and housing. And you do see that where they'll have a house somewhere and, whatever flight attendants are in town, they stay at that house. Yeah, it's not a well-paying job and it is hard work, but you do get to travel. Burner X says, of course you can define off-grid living like you want while you're watching the world through the window of your luxury apartment. Normally, off-grid means you are not hooked to power lines, no water, no sewer. What just so means you have to take care of all of that yourself. Yeah, that's exactly right. Remember when you had that fuss the last time before having a cup of tea? Fuss? What? Carol Hall says that thing in the basket in your passenger seat when I'm driving around in my car looks like a snake. It's a Camo steering wheel cover that I couldn't get on the steering wheel. It's Crotchy's hula hoop. Whenever he's in the car, he likes to hula hoop there in the passenger seat. Confabulous Cruiser's Creative Confabulation says, I agree with you. When I think of off-grid living, it means living with no phone, TV, grocery stores, etc. It's truly independent of society's grid. Then there's off-grid ready, which means you are capable of living without societal help if you need to, but you aren't doing so on a regular basis. Yeah, I mean, really, like prepping. You get prepped, you're ready, power goes out, the grids go down, you're ready to go. But yeah, I think more off-grid living, true off-grid living, is off of all society's grids, being totally dependent on yourself. You're making your own food, you're cooking your food, you're growing your food, plants, raising chickens, making your own power. Solar panels, sure, that's off-grid, and no cell phone. No communication is the grid. I really think so. You're not sitting there watching YouTube on your, on your cell phone connection. That's not living off grid. And D says, as far as I can tell, nomads and travelers are just offloading utilities to others. They're not really living off grid. Most shower in gyms or truck stops, get their water from stores or public facilities, and use public washrooms and or dump stations. I think that true off-grid living is when you need to generate your own electricity, your own water, and store your waste. It's not a full disconnection. Somehow you have to empty the septic tanks. I don't know. Again, there's varying degrees of off-grid, okay? There's a little bit off-grid, a kind of a medium off-grid, and then, like the Unabomber, totally off-grid. I know Fear to Chuck Ray says, Camo Dave, when you get as big and famous as Van City Van Life on YouTube, you too will probably hire an assistant where part of their job description is including your storage requirements. Chrome's secretary, yeah. Camo Dave had a secretary for a little while there when I was in Athens. I did. The memories. Can you live off grid if you're receiving Social Security, disability, or SSI and or food stamps? That to me is the social grid. It's still a grid. It's not power grid, but you're getting government assistance. That's part of the grid. The social grid. Asmod says when he moved from Michigan to Oregon in 1973, he came out in a 69 and a 60 car with the wife and all the belongings. They next moved to an apartment, then to a house in the same town and took a few pickup loads. Next moved to another town, took half a moving van, and next move required a full-size moving van. Now he's downsizing, or they're downsizing, yeah. It does, the bigger the place you live, the more junk you're going to get, right? Okay, now we're talking about switching topics to Van Life Rocks Ray. Everybody's Ray today. I don't know. Ray and Shannon. Anyway, Henry Hobson, I actually agree with you on something. Van Life Rocks Ray. His non-live stream videos are all the same. The photography is pretty good. I think it's pretty good. He just says okay. And kind of repetitive, but that's okay. He puts the camera down and films himself walking away down the trail, picks the camera up, sets it down again to film himself walking around the trail over and over again. Yeah, I think he should talk. Just talk while you're carrying the camera and give us your impressions of what it's like where you are. I think that would add to it, immensely. All right, everybody, that ought to do it. Thank you so much for watching Letters and More, or just letters. I think we're just doing letters today, weren't we? Yeah, I think that was it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching for the 28th of February 2021 Vlog Under.